Steve! Oh my goodness! Holy sh!
Afternoon, folks. It's a brisk day here. Getting to the point. Recently, my channel has reached a milestone of 10,000 subscribers. Yeah, I know that's not a real big thing. Left me scrabbling for crumbs that are left over from all the big YouTubers, mechanical channels. But anyway, it is a milestone for me nonetheless.
I've got some hookers in my room. What do you say we go celebrate my treat?
Well, in lieu of getting hookers as celebration, hookers cost money. I need that money to drag home more totally turd projects and put money into those turd projects. But what we're going to do today is do a follow-up. That wasn't good. Dropped my battery. Looks to be okay. Anyway, back to the topic on hand. What we're going to do today is go through and review some of my past projects. See what they're doing and in what condition they're in now. Let me put this stuff down and we'll get started. As you can see here, one of my current projects. Parts there for it. Gives you a little better look at it. All right, let's get started. My very first video was my Kawasaki, the 1983 KZ1100. As you can see, I clearly still have it. I just put it away for the winter, what, a week ago or so. The only thing I've changed on this, as you recall, I did not like the way it would, I don't know, my wrists would go numb riding this. I've never had this problem with any other motorcycle. I didn't know if it was the grips, the angle of the handlebars, or what. I tried temporarily just these handlebars off of the Nighthawk 450 that I revived last winter, because I only got it for the engine, and that made no difference whatsoever. So I'm going to go back to the old bars. I guess what I'm probably going to do is get some big cushy fancy touring grips, even though that don't really fit the vibe of the bike. Only other thing I've done, it does have some oil leaks, mostly down here by the shifter and right up here. This past spring, before I started riding it, I resealed this, which helped immensely. But as you can see, there is still some oil seeping from there somewhere. It did get so bad last summer before I parked it that, yeah, you could feel the oil, the drops of oil coming out there and hitting my shin when I was wearing shorts, and it would kind of sting. It felt like, you know, something was hitting you, which something was, but it was hot oil. So I figured, yeah, it was time to do something about that. Only other thing, late last summer, as you recall, if you watched the video when I got this thing going, the front tire that I had on it, it had a little bit of a wobble to it. It wasn't enough to affect it riding, but eventually that wobble, it affected how the tire wore, which made the wobble even more pronounced. And it got to the point where, yeah, when you're going around a curve in the road, you could feel that wobble starting to, you know, affect the ability of the bike to hold the curve. So that was getting kind of dangerous. I put this one on first, and I had my misgivings about it. I think what this is a full tilt competition motocross knobby, possibly for a rear. I don't know. It sure looked badass on there, but and it was fine on gravel and dirt, but you got on pavement, and these knobs were just, it's kind of not really showing it because it's so cold out, but these knobs were just so soft and flexible. Even trying to go straight down the highway, the bike would just wander all over. And when you try to correct, it was just very sluggish and non-responsive. It was downright dangerous, to tell you the truth. Thankfully, the little trip I did to get home on the loop I rode on dirt, gravel, and pavement, the pavement did not involve any curves, because that could have been dangerous with this tire. So yeah, I went home, and what's on it now is one of these. I picked these up at the Lincoln swap meet, Lincoln, Nebraska, last year. And they're old. They're kind of a vintage tire, but apparently they've been stored inside somewhere out of the sun. Let's see, Mitsuboshi, not Mitsubishi, Mitsuboshi. I'd never heard of that. If I were to wager a guess, and look at this, the size is even in inches, 400 by 19. If I were to wager a guess on how old these tires were or are, I would say they were probably 80s, 70s, maybe even 60s vintage. But like I said, they were apparently stored inside, and they were, you know, there's no dry rotting on them. So I tried one of these on the front of the Kawasaki, and it did awesome. Dirt, gravel, and pavement. So what's in the future for this? I honestly don't know. This past summer, this spring, when I got it out to ride, I fixed that oil leak, tried the different handlebars, and I think I only rode this maybe 4 times this past spring and summer. I go through cycles. Cycles, get it? You see what I did there? I go through cycles where I just ride the hell out of a motorcycle, and then all of a sudden I just don't care anymore and don't want to ride. And I think I'm heading into one of those cycles where I just don't care to ride. Before I put this away for the winter, I went for a quick spin on it, and it was like, damn, that was fun. Why didn't I ride this more? But I don't know what spring's going to bring, if I'm even going to want to ride it. So if anybody out there is really, really interested in buying this, I would consider selling it. I'm not going to give it away because, yeah, I'm just afraid I'm heading into one of those cycles where for a couple of years I'm not really even going to give a shit about motorcycles. So if that's the case, I just as well send it on its way. Next up, sorry about the wind, was the Propane Lincoln. I did this one to see how well a computer-controlled engine would run on propane. All I did was, I think I unplugged the mass airflow sensor on this, if that was even necessary, but I know I did unplug all 8 of the injectors. This has got the 4.6 fuel-injected engine in it, and I basically just hooked up an IMCO 425 to the intake, and I used the original throttle body as the control, and it ran amazingly well and drove amazingly well, which really surprised me. I figured the propane would not work well with the computer-controlled ignition, but it did great. Now, the future plans for this car, well, even before I did the propane experiment on it, I bought this car because this has a 117-inch wheelbase, the same as a 70 or 71 Torino, which I have a couple of them up there. And I'd like to do a chassis swap because those Torinos have rusty floors in them. Cut the entire, this car is pretty clean for an Iowa car anyway. I cut the entire outer body of it, take one of those Torino shells up there, set it down onto this. Now whether I would keep the 4.6 in the entire running gear or just use the chassis and then, you know, like a 460 engine in or what, I don't know exactly how I would do that, but that is kind of the thought. And then, yeah, whether I would try to make it a nice Torino or kind of a apocalyptic Mad Max thing or what, I don't know, but that is the basic concept of what I've bought this car for. Next up is the bolted tires. It's been, I think, a bit over a year since I had to repair a tube in one of those, so I must finally have it where all the conveyor belting material is in there and protecting the tube from the bolts and washers on the inside. So I think those are all sorted out finally. Yeah, they're still heavy. They're always going to be. Again, I would not recommend anybody do this just because the weight and the expense of it. All those nuts and bolts and washers. I think I said in that video that I have like, I'm ashamed to say it, there's $1,000 in hardware in these tires. And that's not even counting the tubes and the bead locks. That is just the bolts and hardware. They do work not as great as I expected in mud. They're not bad, but they're not any better than an aggressive mud tire. Dirt, rocks, probably a little better than most tires, unless you're talking like an actual competition sticky. I'm probably sure they wouldn't even compare to that in rocks. Where these things really shine is when you're playing on logs, yeah, any kind of wood surface. Those bolts, they really dig into a log and go. But again, would I do it again? No. not on this scale. I'd kind of like to try it an off-roading lawnmower tire. That would be a much easier thing to do and much cheaper, and I think it would be worth the cost for that. What we've got here in this poor lighting is my 66 Bronco that was sat in the shop for like 3 years, and I started up just to get it out of there so I could have a Bronco 2 sitting in there for the next couple of years. Nothing's changed on it other than it just sits out here, gets fired up once in a while and driven for some reason no other reason than just to make sure I keep all the fluids circulating in it. That's a fuel tank in it. I filled that up years ago and it's still running on that same fuel that's probably, what, 5 years old now. So yeah, you can't tell me that fuel goes bad that fast. Does it go bad to some degree? Sure. I don't even remember if I put any stable in it or not. I keep thinking I should drain that tank out and put something fresh in it, but I never do. Alright, one of my favorite projects that I'm ashamed that I haven't gotten any more done to it lately. The 57 Ranchero. It's been sitting here for maybe, what, over a year now. I really want to get back to this, but other stuff gets in the way. But I guess the good side to that is it allows me to collect parts for it at swap meet, which, yeah, I've got some side pipes there. I think there's a pair of headers in there that may get used on it. Get a set of seats at the junkyard for it that I really wanted. They were out of, like, I don't know what exact years, like 2003 to 2008 F-150. I really like those seats. But yeah, it is hard finding a good used set of those, and one popped up at Ranchero and I grabbed those bastards right off the bat. I'm not sure where I got those stashed at. I did have them in there. I don't know where I put them now. But yeah, that's where it's at right now. But there is one more thing about that I'd like to show you. I did get tires for it. These are a military surplus 46-inch tall Goodyear. Got all 4 of them, and I'll show you the rims I got to put on them too. Right there, these popped up last spring on Facebook Marketplace. This is actually the 3rd set of rims I bought for that. The first set I went and bought, and they were okay. They were a really good deal for the price, but they really didn't trip my trigger. I ended up selling those to a friend, so I figured I had time to look for another. Found another set that was down right across the border in Missouri. I went and bought those. I liked those a little better, but again, they weren't really, and so I ended up reselling those for what I got in them after I found these. These showed up just a few miles away, one of the next towns over to the south of me. I think I paid $300 for these. I really like them a lot better than the other two, but they're still not my ideal wheel. But I did like the fact that they were 12 inches wide, where the other 2 sets I had were 10s, even though I don't really need 12s. But yeah, just Ranchero is just collecting parts for now. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, I got a brand new set. Those of you that aren't familiar with this project, it's a 57 Ranchero sitting on a 2008 Super Duty chassis. So it's got a 60 up front. And it was about a year ago at the Sedalia swap meet, Sedalia, Missouri. I found a brand new set of 538 high pinion gears for the front of this, $20. So yeah, again, that's a good thing having so many projects. It gives you opportunities to collect good deals on parts for the ones you're not working on at the moment, if you have to find a good side to that. Ah yes, the old Bullnose Ford. This was my first revival will it run and drive video truck. It is being used for parts now, which was its intended purpose when I went and bought it. It had a T19 4-speed in it, which I'm wanting to use in the Ranchero project. The 460 in it was stuck when I bought it. I got it unstuck and running. That was also, yeah, other than being a revival, this was part of another video, my Unstuckaganza. I had this, my 58 Edsel Ranger, which you can't see from here, and then a 58 Ranchero crew cab that they all 3 had stuck engines, and I made an episode of that, and I got this and the Edsel unstuck, but unfortunately that 58 Ranchero crew cab, it was a lost cause because At least one of the cylinders was full of water for who knows how long. But again, this is for parts. The 460 is still in it. I've used the steering off it, some other stuff, and just recently started using it to store this engine for another project I recently got. This engine is a 2.5 4-cylinder from out of a 98 Ranger. The crippler. It hasn't crippled me yet, but it has frustrated me. So I'm kind of thinking I might just redo this whole thing. So I kind of want to use this V-twin on something else. Go to an opposed engine that I've got, and maybe run a smaller pulley right here that will still let me keep what little speed, top end speed that I do have. And it will also, going to a smaller pulley right there, will tuck that pulley up and protect it and the belt a little bit more. But that's going to take time to do that. Time that I don't really see me having real soon, so I might just keep on herding it along just like it is. Honestly, I don't even play on it much. I find more enjoyment in building it than actually riding it. I'm old enough that, yeah, my back does not recover from that stuff, bouncing around on that thing with no suspension. It's another thing I might consider selling, but it wouldn't be cheap because I just really like having it. I'm just kind of really proud of that one. It just looks awesome, even if I do only putz around on it here and there. But again, someone made me the right offer, it might go bye-bye. The flare side that I revived, as you recall, it had a bent frame. Was thinking about using this to go to Cape Girardeau swap meet. Decided against that. Found that it had most likely one or more injectors, probably more by the way it ran, because everything else about the engine was healthy. But the main concern with carrying on with the project was that bent frame, and I didn't know if this thing was going to eat tires like every 50 miles or what. And plus we were going to be pulling a trailer and a Comet home, so I figured the next candidate that I'm going to show would be better for that. But I might get back to this someday if I find a use for it. The green F-150, this is what made the trip. Straight 6, 4-speed, it did awesome. The reason it's sitting back up here is because the rear frame is rusted so badly I didn't feel safe to keep driving it. Plus the guy that I got it from told me it was, you know, the rusted cab, which you saw me do a fix on, the front cab mounts, and the rear main leaked real bad on it, which we never had a problem on the whole trip. But once we got home, and I drove this for a couple more weeks on and off before I went and took the insurance off it and parked it. But as the weather warmed up, that rear main seal started to leak really bad, which is really bizarre because you'd think going on a long road trip with it like that would have warmed up that rear main seal enough to make it leak, but it never did. But anyway, it's, yeah, back up here. I've been using it for parts. Let's see, I've pulled the carburetor off of it, the steering column. I used those on the 76 Bronco. Seems like there's something else I've used off of that, but I can't remember what. But yeah, there it is. Someday I guess that 306 and that 4-speed could be used in something else if I fix that rear main leak. So the side note to the F-150 trip to Cape Girardeau was we picked this up as a project. The first of the two 1965 Mercury Comets. I believe this one's a Caliente. I think it says it on there somewhere, or on the dash or something. But anyway, the plan with this one, I've got most of the stuff collected to do a Mustang 2 front suspension swap that I've picked up at swap meets. The only thing I think I'm missing that I can think of off the top of my head is a steering rack. As you can see, I got the brakes, I got spindles, hubs, there's A-arms buried under here and in that box. Here's going to be the tricky part, that cross member. I bought that at a swap meet along with, what else? I don't know, some of it. But that cross member is for, it's labeled, I don't know, some sort of a 40s or 50s, but it doesn't say what, Chevy, Ford, or whatnot. So anyway, I'm probably going to have to modify that cross member to work with this car. Yeah, it's probably a terrible idea to take a bunch of different manufacturer stuff and try to put it all together, even though it's all Mustang 2 type stuff. Is that a good idea? Probably not, but I'm going to try it anyway, one of these days. And once the Mustang 2 stuff is done, I'll probably put a narrowed 8.8 back here from an Explorer, and then it'll get a small block Ford and a 5-speed, which I've already got the 5-speed. Loader tires, still doing awesome. These things will probably dry rot before I ever wear them out. In hindsight, getting some tractor style lug tires would have been better for what I'm doing with it. But for the price, these are like leaps and bounds better than what was on it for those bald things. Still using the oil burning shop furnace just the way it is. I still get comments on that, people suggesting ways to make it burn cleaner, and I've tried a couple of them with no success so far. I've tried some of the simpler stuff. The 58 Edsel Ranger 2-door. This was another one of my first revivals. And it was also part of the Unstuck-A-Ganza because the engine was stuck in it. By the time I got this thing running, I fought with those damn points before I finally went to a Duraspark ignition. And none of the rest of the electrical in the car works. The transmission seems to work fine. The engine runs, but it does burn quite a bit of oil. I was trying to get this thing going and take it to it's kind of a car show swap meet event that's over in eastern Iowa. And I just ran out of time by the time I got this thing going. And yeah, the teletouch doesn't work because none of the electrical works. It might be something simple, but again, I just ran out of time. I'm thinking about trying it again this spring. Since then, I have acquired 2 other Edsels. The $300 race car for a Junkyard Digs, what the hell do you call that? The Grand Prix. The only reason I still have this car around hasn't been sent to the crusher because it has that supercharged V6 that runs just awesome. There's only there's 3 ideas I've had with this. Number 1, find an old Volkswagen rail buggy, swap this whole engine and transaxle into the back of it. I'm not really into rail buggies. It would be fun, but for the amount of time it would take to do that and resources, I'd rather work on other things. Number 2 is just get it running and take it to there's an event here in southern Iowa called the Redneck Rally. It's just basically a kind of an off-road race with a bunch of just junk cars out there. That would be something that would be more realistic. And number 3 would be to just take this thing out off-roading and destroy it. But yeah, the supercharged V6, only reason it's still here. I don't have any pictures of it because it's not mine, but the Ford 9N that we stopped and worked on our way home from the Lawrence, Kansas swap meet. That belonged to my sister and her husband. He finally did eventually get it running. Well, we had it running the day we were there on starting fluid. But anyway, he finally got carburetor for it, got it running, and he sold it. And sadly, it sounds like the guy that bought it off him was just going to use it for parts. Alright, back to this rig. Back when I did the video about the popping front end, that was the Lockrite, I believe. I put a torque locker in it, still doing great. And where I welded the axle where it was starting to collapse, it does seep a bit. You can't really see it right now. Maybe the seeping stopped. At any rate, that's from the steering. But at any rate, seems to be holding up pretty good for now. The 69 Mustang Sports roof. It's pretty much largely the same as you've ever seen it. It's been in a couple of videos. I have bought parts for it that I haven't got around to doing. I've got that Performer RPM air gap that I got at Iola, almost 2 years ago now. It's got a Victor Jr. on it and a 750, which that's fine if I were drag racing, which I did in one video, and it was fun, but I wasn't crazy about it. I feel like this intake and a smaller like 650 carb would be better for what I do with this, which is street driving and then some autocross and rallycross. I also have a fiberglass hood that I got for this at the Springfield, Missouri swap meet this past summer. And I have an 8.8 that's in it, but I also have a full floater 9-inch that I'd like to put in it. I got an aluminum case, I've got gears. The only thing that's keeping me from doing that right now is I need some sort of a limited slip or locker. I'd really like to have one of those, what are those, torsion gear lockers or wave lockers. The name of them escaped me now. There's two different kinds of them. I'd like to go with either one of those, but they're just so horribly expensive. That's what's keeping me from doing putting a 9-inch back in it. Even though the 8.8 is fine, it's geared at 410. I don't need that much gear. This 420 stroker motor makes plenty of torque that it does not need that much gear. So I could squeeze a little more mileage out of it, pull the RPMs down a little bit when I'm driving this thing out on the road. And I think that'd be pretty damn good, even though you don't really drive an old muscle car for mileage. Last time I checked this thing, it was getting 13, 14. So yeah, anyway, I still love the car. It's kind of like my motorcycle, though. I think I only drove this thing maybe 5 times this summer. And the thoughts crossed my mind, maybe it's time to sell this, which that seems like a horrible idea considering I've owned this car since like 1990 and kept it, hauled it around every time I've moved and stored it. And then, yeah, I finally got the thing going. And I don't know what's happened the last couple of years. I haven't driven it much. Maybe just the novelty of it is worn off. So, again, I don't want to sell this, but if somebody offered me the right price, I might let it go, although I would probably keep my stroker motor and my T56 6-speed that's in it and maybe use that in one of my Comets or something. The 76 Bronco that I worked so hard on last summer. I said hard on. Yeah, I've still got a video started last spring where, as you can see, I started cutting rust out of the front floor and it got very severely hacked. Not that I don't want to work on it. Other things get in the way, and this is how it sat all summer. Maybe I'll get back to work on this winter. Got a couple of things in the shop there I need to get squared away, and I'd like to get this in, at least get this side patched up before it gets booted out into the snow again. Just like last year, but yeah, that's about the only difference I've done with it so far. I did drive it a couple of times, and then, yeah, started cutting into that floor rust, and there she is, sadly. The Nighthawk 450, this is where it ended up, right up here in the trees. And what's left of it is still up here. Right there, that's all I got left, and that's all I wanted from that. Because as you recall, I was talking about transplanting this into that Polaris 4x4 ATV that I've got with a seized up engine. The only other thing I did do with that motorcycle, I tried putting the handlebars on my Kawasaki to see if those would be more comfortable. They were not. Even more so, they were more narrow than the ones that I had on it, and I did not like that either. I kind of preferred the wider bars for more leverage. But anyway, that's all that's left of the Nighthawk. Ah yes, the venerable Suzuki King Quad. You know, I never realized how useful it is to have one of these quads around until I got this thing running. I use it a lot. Run up in the field, pull parts, check on something, whatever. It is just so damn useful. It's doing great. Every once in a while it'll do something where it won't start, and I start going up to the front of the rig and start jiggling around wires and messing with fuses, and then it'll start. We'll get back to that, but this past summer when I went to go buy some lawnmowers, the ones that some of those that I used to do that big lawnmower revival, the guy had them behind his garage. I decided I'm just going to take the quad with me, make it easier to drag them out from behind his garage all the way across his yard out to the driveway where I could load them on my cart trailer. Got all that done, put this King Quad on the very back of the trailer. Everything was sitting on there sideways. So I had everything tied down, got driving home. Now, wow, everything, the planets and the stars must have been aligned just right for this to happen. But the ratchet strap holding the King Quad at the rear broke. As I said, the conditions were just perfect. I was going around a curve in the road. There must have been a little bump that shook the trailer, and that strap breaking at just the right time. The fact that I actually looked in the rearview mirror at just the right time and got to see it. That thing, swear to God, it looked like it was getting launched with the catapult off of an aircraft carrier deck. But yeah, I'm sure my jaw was in my lap watching that in the rearview mirror as it just launched off the side of that trailer. I don't know how when it hit the ground. Luckily there was no other car coming because it shot off into the other lane, oncoming lane. But when it shot off that trailer and hit the ground, or the pavement, it caught the very edge of the pavement and it didn't go into a tumble. It had just enough angle when it landed that it bounced, took one bounce, totally cleared the ditch and plowed right into a fence and right through the fence, and that's where I lost it in the trees. And I was like, don't even bother going back. That thing's got to be trash. We're like, no, I got to go back for it. And got the whole rig turned around and went back for it, and there it was laying upside down out in the field. Went out there, rolled it over, started right up. The handlebars got a little tweaked. I haven't done anything about those. The racks were just, oh my God, so mangled. But it fired up and I drove it out of there. Now, the broken fence, I went to the nearest house to try to, you know, make things right. But I don't know if that house even had anything to do with that fence. I don't think anybody was even living at that house at the time because there was a deck there and there were big, huge weeds growing up through the middle of the deck. And I don't mean just a little, but they were a couple feet tall. But at least I tried to make it right. I got the thing home, used some chains and boards and the tilt function on my loader and got the rack straightened out fairly well. But ever since then, it hasn't pulled that crap with the wiring not making it start. Now that I said that, next time I go to use it, it won't start. But anyway, that was not the only notable thing that's gone on with the King Quad since the videos. As you can see, I don't know if it was because of it getting launched off the trailer or what. It always looks like it's constantly leaning on the one side, so maybe something is bent. Maybe it's just the racks. I don't know. Like, yeah, if you look at it closely, it looks like the front's fairly level, but yeah, the ass end's got a tilt to it. It doesn't seem to matter. It still functions just fine. The only other thing I can say about it, the brakes still are not very good on it, but at least there's something there. Still got the lifted 302 swapped Explorer Sport Track. It's another one that I've thought many times about selling because it just sits around here, does nothing, but just like when I introduced you to it, because yeah, when one of the other vehicles goes down, I can throw insurance on it and got something to drive. Well, then there's the, what was that, a 73, 74, the square body of Aaron's that we got going last winter and took it to Cape Girardeau. He said he was going to use it as his daily driver. That has not happened. Apparently he likes the comfort of his newer Duramax, and who wouldn't, really? He tells me that about the only thing that truck gets used for now, the square body, it's parked up by the house. His wife takes bags of trash out and puts it in the bed, and then he uses it to drive the trash to the dumpster out by the road. Okay, the little side note for the square body was what we towed home with it. This was the second of the 65 Mercury Comets that I bought. And while this one from the outside looks superior to the first one, it is not when you look underneath. It's a unibody car, but I'm going to call it the frame underneath. It's not just that the floors are gone, it's the subframes are just horribly rusted. I'm actually thinking about using this to make the trip back to Cape Girardeau swap meet this winter. It's supposed to run, but it's probably been, I don't know, 8 or 9 years since it ran. It's got the 200 cubic inch 6-cylinder automatic transmission. I don't know. It's a maybe. We shall see. Damn near forgot about the Dwarf car project. As you can see, I've got it all stripped down. It's ready to start building. I just need the space to do it because it's going to be kind of a long-term project. I need to get that Bronco 2 four-wheel and buggy thing done and out of the shop so I can get this in there. I have picked up some Cherokee axles for it. I'm not 100% sure that's the route I'm going to take, but they were cheap enough, so I grabbed them. And yeah, I need to do a revival on that Goldwing that I bought for the 1500cc engine for this. And that brings us to Groundskeeper Willie. This thing did not last very long. I think I had it broke within a couple of weeks of finishing that video. That was just way too much tire for those little 3/4 axles. I can't show it to you here. Maybe I can, but I was playing in a mud hole with it and I got stuck. So I just left it. There were ruts. I had the rear tires stuck in a rut going crossways in them. And I figured I'll just let it dry for a couple days, be able to drive it out. Came back a couple days, it was dry, but those ruts were still deep enough that, man, it was really working that thing hard. And I got it out finally. I went to use it. We were going to run in a parade a couple weeks later. And I went to load this on the trailer, and it was acting weird. Long story short, something in the transaxle gave out. It wouldn't go backwards or forwards or anything. And I got to looking at it, and this is completely separate, or maybe it isn't. But anyway, I got to looking at it, the outside, the keyway that runs all the way across the axle shaft. On one side, you can see it's actually got a twist in it, and the other side, it doesn't align at all with the keyway that's on this side. So whether that axle shaft is broken in there completely or something else, yeah, the rear end in this thing is totally trashed. I've got a, where is it? I thought I had it around here. Oh, there it is. Got a Peerless 820 there I picked up. Might put that in it. Or there's another idea. I mean, this one's obviously trashed, but if I could get another one that's like this, it would bolt in. There's an idea that I'd kind of like to try just out of curiosity. But I don't know. We'll see when the time ever comes I get to work on this again. Whether I just go ahead and do the simple job with the 820 or go totally unnecessary and waste my time trying this crazy idea with that. All right, the big lawnmower revival episode. As you can see, damn near everything's back up here in the weeds. This one here, a friend said he wanted to buy it, but he hasn't come through yet. I've got an idea to use the engine and transaxle out of this for a rather weird idea. We'll see if that happens or not. That one was crap. This one here, the steering was broke. If I do revamp the crippler like I'm talking about, I'll probably use the opposed twin out of this and try to totally emulate the belt drive setup, the 90-degree drive, because it works so slick on this. There'll be a difference in the length of the belt, but I'll try to keep everything else if I go that route. Now this one here, the only value to it, as you recall, was the engine. And I do have a rear engine snapper up there in my scrap that is a damn good mower, other than it just needs an engine. I kind of have a soft spot for those rear engine snappers, because back in high school my dad had the contract for mowing the city park. So yeah, we spent a lot of hours. He had 2 of those, and me and him would spend many an hour on those things mowing that city park. So I guess that's a little weird sentimental attachment like that, but you know, it was time with my dad. The John Deere, it was the only one that I couldn't get running because it needed a head gasket. As you can see, I've fixed that, and I have been mowing with this up till I put it away a couple weeks ago. It's not that it's really that great of a mower, but for some odd reason it's actually somewhat comfortable for a tall guy like me. Power wise, it's kind of pathetic. I can't mow and go any faster than 3rd gear, but that's fine because all the mowing around here gets done with the big Gravely. This just mows spots, tight little spots I can't get into with that big bastard, and it mows the embankment over there by the road. So yeah, it doesn't get much use, but like I said, mostly it's just because it's kind of comfortable, more so than this. This is what I used to use, this old snapper. And it is just, yeah, I've welded this thing so many times. My dad gave me this. He was like, take this and scrap it. But I took it home, got it running, and started using it. The engine runs great. It leaks oil out the crank. That's the only reason I've got it parked in here. Otherwise, it would be up in the weeds. One of these days, I'll get that engine pulled off for something and reseal that crank. But yeah, the steering is just sloppy as hell. I guess the transaxle still works. It's a hydrostat, but yeah, that whole mower is just shot. This one is in much better shape, even though that one has much more power. My daughter's two-door Explorer wheel and rig. As you watched the video, you saw she rolled it. Since then, I've pulled the doors and the rear hatch off just for some weight savings. Excuse me. Eventually, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to pull all the carpet and the interior out. I'll probably take the windows off, just get rid of all that weight, because I was not going to put another windshield in it. So with no windshield in it, there's no point in even trying to protect the interior. Just get it out of there, get the weight off of it. I might build some tube doors for it. I found some latches out there in the shed. And I might even go through the trouble of cutting the entire top off and just building a cage in it that way. When she first asked me to build this, she wanted to build it as a buggy, and I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen right off the bat. But it seems like if we get into cutting the top off and building a cage, well, not we, but me. If I get into that, it's getting quickly into buggy territory anyway. But again, it's going to be a matter of time. This thing probably won't get wheeled again until spring at least, so plenty of time to think that over. And finally, we have the FU50. Yes, that's right, it's parked back up here in the field. The goal was to get it running and see if it would do work again. Well, I did tow one vehicle home with it, but it was kind of a pathetic thing. It did run good, it just didn't make any power. Now, a couple weeks after wrapping up that video, I was up here playing with it. I was playing with the step-up springs in the Edelbrock, and I was really rodding on it pretty hard, and a rattle developed in the engine. It was an inconsistent rattle. It would kind of come and go every couple of seconds, so I was thinking maybe it was the valve train. I might have over-revved it, you know, thrown a push rod or a rocker arm, something like that in the valve train. A couple days later, tore the valve covers off. Everything in there looked good. So, okay, I went, pulled the spark plugs out, and the number 4 spark plug, the electrode was smashed shut, and you could see other little nicks and dings on the spark plug. So yeah, I think I might have broken a piston in there or something like that. But while I had all the spark plugs out, just out of curiosity, even though I knew the truck was dead at that point, it did still run and move under its own power, but it was dead for me as using as a tow rig. But anyway, I went, just out of curiosity, I put a compression tester on all 8 cylinders. Of course, number 4, it only made the dial just twitch. Number 7 only made, what was it, about 60 pounds of pressure, and the other 6 only made between 80 and 100. So yeah, what was killing this truck was it had no compression anyway, and I don't know why. You'd think if the compression was that bad, it would have had a hell of a lot of blow by, but it didn't. But anyway, the engine is just weak and worn out before I did the final bit of damage to it. I could still put another engine in it, transmission, all that, and make it usable, and it might come to that someday. I still have other ideas for thoughts for this truck. And the final thing I'd like to cover is my tire repairs. I don't know if I can show this one, even though that was only, what, a couple weeks ago. Yeah, there it is, that I did this one. And then the one I did, what was that, about a year ago maybe? 31-inch tire for a friend's Samurai for the spare. I asked him about that recently. He said it was leaking in the area where the patch was at, so he just went ahead and put a tube in it. But other than that, it's holding. It's just for some reason it's leaking out of that patched area. And like I said, maybe I need to get some new fresh tire repair material. Maybe that stuff's just been sitting around too long. Its shelf life has expired, so to speak. Anyway, that pretty well wraps up anything of that I feel is of any interest around here that I've already worked on. I'd like to thank everybody that's subscribed and watched. Hopefully I can keep on growing, and hopefully I can get projects that you guys want to see. And on that vein, what do you think? I've got a lot of projects, vehicles sitting around here. Would you like a tour of the place? I show you what I've got and what I'm thinking about doing with all this crap. Which I will probably never have time in this lifetime to ever complete, but do you want to see it anyway? I'm willing to give that a shot. Talk about my hopes and dreams. But anyway, as usual, till next time.
Watch out for your cornhole, bud.